Unexpectedly, a man named Nico was abruptly expelled from his group. Initially, he had been selected to join the heroes' party formed to defeat the Demon Lord 2 years ago. Though he tried to decline the offer since he hated working, they were persistent. Eventually, he agreed and convinced himself it would contribute to his martial arts training. After joining, they encountered various magical creatures and overcame numerous difficult trials as a team. However, just as the Demon Lord's castle came into view, the hero who led the party expelled him, which he could not accept. In response, the swordswoman exclaimed that Nico had already heard what the heroes said. Nico then replied that they were supposed to be a team. However, the hero retorted that he would never count a coward like Nico as part of their team of heroes. Though Nico had been a useful pawn, his reputation damaged their good image. Nico then tried to refute his words, but the mage immediately reprimanded him. She admitted that Nico's advice had helped her polish her technique and become stronger. Upon hearing this, Nico declared that he was a vital element of their party. However, the mage clarified that she now regretted it because people began to see her as the disciple of a coward, and also asked him if he knew how it felt to be labeled a coward, to which he replied no, but assured her he understood, as his brothers in arms had labeled him the same. In response, she scolded him for not taking things seriously, which she hated about him. Nevertheless, he asked if their party could manage without him. The hero then responded yes because he was the hero, and even asked the girls, who immediately agreed. Seeing that he was only getting in their way, Nico decided to go back the way he came and wished them luck with the Demon Lord. The hero then assured him that they wouldn't run into any problems as long as he was there, and urged Nico to quickly disappear. Out of nowhere, he unsheathed his sword and attacked Nico's back, while exclaiming that Nico shouldn't lower his guard. After he and the girls attacked Nico, they decided to steal his equipment and told him to take care as they left him wounded, which made Nico ask who's the real coward. 2 years later, Nico repeated to Sadala that he wouldn't get a job, explaining that the life of a martial artist demands a lot of training, requiring both muscle building and practice techniques, so getting a job would be detrimental to that, and working creates social ties that make him hesitant to risk his life. For these reasons, he believed that as a martial artist, he would lose if he worked. Sadala then understood what he was trying to say, and concluded that he just wanted to keep freeloading, to which he answered yes. She then reminded him that she would have thrown him out on the street if he weren't her younger brother. However, he explained that he had no financial problems because she covered all his living expenses, and he only needed to beat up some bandits if he needed pocket money. Indeed, she had heard that he had amassed quite a hefty sum that way, and wondered what that money was for. Though he answered that it was a secret, she already figured out it wasn't for a good reason. So he then pointed out that she would never find happiness if she kept sighing all the time, which made her ask whose fault he thought it was. Setting that aside, he then asked why she was making him work when she was rich enough to live comfortably and supporting him wouldn't affect her. In response, Sadala sighed in disbelief since he was also the heir to a count. But he reminded her that the title of count was given to their uncle to award his deeds and no land came with decoration, so he could do without prestige or honor. Nonetheless, Sadala persisted that she was going to make him work. Though he doubted that a place would hire a jobless person like him, she informed him that she would be the one referring him to the job. So he immediately asked if she knew of a place that paid well and offered plenty of vacations even if he slacked off, but she scolded him instead. Sadala then explained that the place she had in mind suited him perfectly, which made him remind her that he didn't intend to work and asked if she didn't know the reason that led him to this ideology. In response, she declared that he aimed to sponge off others and live an easy life. Seeing him silent, she quickly took back her words. Putting that aside, she reminded him that it was time to get over his past traumas and reintegrate into society, as the world wasn't filled with bad people contrary to his belief. She then informed him that the school she managed was currently looking for new teaching staff, and she would have him become an instructor there. He then began to think that he would be teaching part of the curriculum, but she clarified that he was not qualified for that. Instead, she informed him about the declining birth rates becoming a major social problem. To increase the number of marriages, it's essential to boost people's attractiveness, and her school was founded in response to the public demand for teaching boys and girls how to enhance their appeal. In other words, she's focusing on strength. In the past, attraction depended on income, looks, and intelligence, but that has changed. Today, no matter how wealthy, beautiful, or smart someone is, if they're weak, it doesn't matter. One critic of this trend even went as far as to say, a man's worth is determined by his muscles. Thus, their academy emerged as the natural response to the need for strong individuals. Though Nico seems jobless now, he still used to be a member of the hero's party and is skilled in martial arts, so she trusts the school will hire him on the spot. Furthermore, she thinks teaching others will help him grow as a person. However, he clarified that he's not good with people, but she assured him that he will get along with everyone in no time. With that, she also wished him luck on the exam he needed to pass for the job. Upon hearing this, he quickly called it bothersome but accepted it. However, Sadala informed him that she would be supervising the exam and would kick him out of the house if he failed on purpose. With that, he had to give his best effort to avoid becoming homeless. The next day, in the Republic of Shinoa, a nation of immigrants where demi-humans and humans coexist, Nico observed elves, goblins, humans, and various races getting along, which always surprised him. Suddenly, he realized he had forgotten his wallet. As he pondered what to do, he heard some commotion. Upon looking back, he saw a girl explaining that the other person bumped into her, but the man insisted she started and wrinkled his favorite shirt. Upon hearing this, Nico saw this as his chance to step in. As the man demanded money from the girl, Nico grabbed her and ran, prompting the man to call out after them. But after finding a safe place to hide, they were still cornered by the man. Seeing the man slowly approaching them, Nico quickly punched him. Upon witnessing this, the girl then asked Nico's identity, to which he replied that he is a man with no direction in life, but that will soon change because he's going to become a teacher. After declaring that he was going to become a teacher, he added that it would be at the Shano Academy. Upon hearing this, she excitedly told him that she had been admitted there, but he could hardly believe it, and pointed out that she looked like the weak type. In response, she explained that's why she enrolled, because she wants to change. Moreover, she also mentioned that she had received permission from her parents to attend that academy. But realizing she hadn't introduced herself, she then told him that her name was Alice, and that she would be a first-year student. In response, Nico also introduced himself. Following that, Alice then thanked him for his help, but he asked her not to mention it because he had other reasons and began looking for the man's wallet. Fortunately, he found 13 gold coins, but this made Alice question if he planned to take the man's wallet, to which he replied that the man had no right to complain, given that he was extorting people. She then tried to reason further, but he quickly asked her not to overthink it. Suddenly, a girl calling Alice a princess arrived, and accused Nico of being a criminal for bringing Alice to a back alley. Nico then tried to explain, but the girl refused to listen and attacked him. However, he managed to grab her hands and throw her to the ground. Alice then immediately checked on the girl, named Iris, who informed her that she rushed over upon hearing that Alice had been taken away. But Alice assured her that she was fine because Nico, who was going to become a teacher, had helped her. Upon learning this, Iris quickly apologized for thinking badly of him, but Nico emphasized that it doesn't make a good impression to punch first and ask questions later. He also asked her if he looked like someone who would kidnap people, so Iris then responded that he had a typical criminal face and looked like a friendless loser, which triggered him. Nevertheless, Alice hoped he could be their homeroom teacher, but Iris mentioned the exhibition matches before the entrance ceremony to showcase the teacher's prowess. With this in mind, they then asked him if he could make it in time and assured him that they could explain the situation to the school. After agreeing with their idea, he bid farewell to them, prompting Alice to think that he was busy as a bee. Later, at Shano Academy, Nico finally arrived. Upon seeing Sadala, he immediately apologized, but she assured him that she already knew about him rescuing a student from a thug. Though she thought he was rotten, she acknowledged that he did a good job, but he suspected that she didn't mean it. Moving on, Sadala informed him that the audience had been briefed on the situation, and that his opponent awaited him for the exam, meaning he hadn't flunked and had to continue. She then asked if he remembered the details of the exam. The rules were those of a demonstration match. He would win by either making his opponent concede or rendering them unable to continue. He could also employ any magic or weapon of his preference, though she believed this was irrelevant since his bare fists had always been his best weapon. Combat is divided into 3 primary forms based on one's style of choice. The first style involves the use of guns, artillery, or other firearm. The second category delves into the realm of magic, which involves bending the elements at will to conjure forces such as fire or water. Lastly, the third combat style involves using kai. After rigorous training, martial artists and swordsmen can manifest their inner vital force, making their bodies tougher than steel and enabling them to survive lethal falls and split rocks with their attacks. With that, she warned him to think twice before acting, as his opponent possessed quite elevated kai levels, but he assured her that he would show her that all those years beating bandits and training in the mountains weren't in vain. Later at the stage, the crowd cheered for Nico for rescuing their princess, which made his opponent point out that he was quite popular. Following that, the opponent then asked Nico if his kai left him speechless, and added that only a handful of people in the academy could control it as well as he could. In response, Nico emphasized that his opponent seemed to have the skills to be that confident, but if he hadn't been his opponent, he would have certainly passed today. Still, Nico apologized in advance to avoid problems in the future and proceeded to release his Kai. Seeing this, his opponent giggled and apologized because he found Nico's Kai levels to be run-of-the-mill. But as he continued to laugh, Nico just smiled. Meanwhile, Alice finally arrived and was guided by Sadala to her seat, but upon seeing it, she immediately refused and clarified that she was going to become a student at the academy and must refrain from receiving special treatment. After apologizing to Alice, Sadala pointed out how much she took after the king, which made Alice ask if she was familiar with her father. Sadala then explained that the academy kept close ties to the Elven Kingdom because there were plans to build a sister school in Elven territory. However, Alice clarified that she had no idea because her father didn't keep her up to date on important things, possibly because she was not trustworthy enough. Regardless, Sadala informed her that the king entrusted her with the task of shaping Alice into an excellent combatant, and she planned to see the task through to completion. Thus, she urged Alice to have faith in herself because graduating from the academy would earn her the king's respect. Hearing this, Alice then vowed to grow stronger and earn her father's trust. Following that, Sadala then proceeded to ask about the trouble Alice encountered on her way to the academy. Upon hearing her story, Sadala was glad that her foolish brother could be of help. But Iris suddenly interjected and asked if Nico was injured, because looking at him, she had observed that his Kai levels were much lower than before, which made Alice begin to think that he might have been injured while rescuing her, but Sadala assured her that Nico was in perfect form. Still, Iris questioned why his Kai was so weak, so Sadala explained that Nico didn't see this as a mere demonstration. To him, this was a fight with no restrictions. On the other side, Nico's opponent urged him to just surrender, which made Nico call him blunt. His opponent then declared that defeating him would be simple, and he didn't want his reputation as a teacher tarnished by easily defeating the hero who saved the Elven princess. He also added that he was a sucker for popularity, so he thought it would be favorable for both of them if Nico just surrendered, but Nico refused. Regardless, his opponent continued to proclaim that his Kai levels were around those of a B-ranked adventurer, while Nico was among the lowest rank. Hearing this, Nico finally agreed with him and raised his arms. Seeing him approach, his opponent declared that he had made the right decision, to which Nico agreed. But unexpectedly, Nico kicked him in the privates. Nico then explained that since he was about to become a teacher, he would share what happened. He confessed that he got his opponent to drop his guard by lowering his Kai output and pretending to surrender. Confident in the difference between their proficiencies, his opponent allowed him to approach. Since it didn't cross his mind that Nico might suddenly change his mind, he left himself fully exposed. Moreover, all the Kai Nico had concealed was concentrated in his legs, so he took him down with a single blow. With that, Nico urged him to learn how real fights take place next time. Seeing Nico's opponent unable to fight back, the announcer declared Nico the winner. However, the crowd called it foul play and labeled Nico a coward. They also declared that they wouldn't accept him as a fellow teacher because he would be a bad influence on the students. Witnessing this, Sadala assured them that while it was indeed a cheap victory, Nico did not break any rules, and that the speed and amount of Kai released in that kick were undeniably exceptional. Most importantly, she believed that a man who falls for such a simple trick is not worthy of teaching at their academy. After silencing them, Sadala declared that she welcomed Nico as part of the academy's faculty. She also urged the others to learn from Nico and understand that real combat doesn't always start straightforwardly. And that's why keeping that basic tenet in mind would greatly improve their studies and hone their battle instincts. Later at the academy, Nico noticed the segregation within the classrooms. Students were separated by race, orcs with orcs and humans with humans. However, there were two exceptions: the elite first class, composed of the strongest students, and the 9th class, which he was in charge of. The 9th class was made up of the weakest first-year students and were kept around for the funds their wealthy families provided. So most students in this class were aristocrats or the children of rich merchants. Upon entering, he was met with silence and Iris questioning his presence. After seeing her, he recognized her as the girl he had confronted in the back alley. Nevertheless, she continued to demand answers, so he informed her that he was their new teacher. But Iris believed that he was a coward and ordered him to leave, a sentiment shared by her classmates. Upon hearing this, a memory from the past flashes back in his mind. In response, he reminded them of their status as the weakest students, so they lacked the right to choose their teacher, which quieted them. Seeing this, he then asked why they thought he was assigned to their class, and when they could not answer, he explained that no other teacher was willing to take on their class, so he was given the task of shaping the weakest students in the academy. But they retorted that while they might be the weakest, Iris was one of the 5 strongest students in the academy. Indeed, Nico acknowledged that she's the one with the strongest Kai among them, but he clarifies that the reason is simple, and that's because it's her duty to be strong as Alice's bodyguard. Setting that aside, he informed them that he had no intention of teaching and asked them to do self-study instead. Though they were initially shocked, they declared that they could become stronger on their own and started training. Seeing them train, Nico observed that only Iris was worth his attention, but he still decided to check on the others as well. So he then took Alice's book and announced that he would test her strength, so everyone must put their books away and start doing push-ups. Despite complaints about the supposed self-study, they still complied. As he observed, Nico noticed Alice struggling with push-ups. When she admitted that she could not do them, he encouraged her to try again, but she still struggled doing it, so he advised her to focus her Kai on her upper body, because Kai could be concentrated in specific areas, and since push-ups required arm and chest strength, any Kai in her head or legs was wasted. Thus, Alice focused only on the upper part of her body and released her Kai. Finally, she succeeded, prompting Nico to praise her ability to focus Kai on specific parts of her body. She then explained that it's because she didn't have much muscle or Kai, so she had always been good at quickly circulating Kai through her body. After confirming this, Nico declared he had a good grasp of their capabilities and instructed them to resume their self-study, but this made Iris look at him curiously. Later on his way, Nico reflected on his desire to become stronger by teaching others. However, he realized he could not teach under these conditions and feared he might get fired if things continued this way. Suddenly, he heard some noise outside and speculated that a fight had broken out. Outside, Alice was confronting an orc girl and urging her to stop picking on them. But the orc girl refused and declared that the 9th class existed only to be bullied by the elite first-class students, which made Nico realize the orc girl was from the elite class. The orc girl then continued to belittle them, claiming that the 9th class relied on their parents' money to compensate for their lack of ability, and that they should thank her for giving them a reason for their existence. In response, Alice pointed out that the orc girl's attitude was just her ego speaking, to which the orc girl agreed but stated that strength allowed her ego to exist, so as long as she was one of the strongest in the academy, the 9th class would be nothing but her punching bags. Seeing them scared, she emphasized that this was what made the 9th class a bunch of cowards, but Alice explained that while they might be cowards, they were kind at heart. Hearing this, the orc girl decided to expose this as a facade and ordered the 3 boys to fight each other, promising that the winner would get a free pass from her bullying. Alice then tried to stop her, but one of the boys immediately punched his classmate, forcing Alice to intervene. As a result, the orc girl laughed and called them rotten both inside and out. Despite this, Alice continued to urge her to stop humiliating her classmates, but the orc girl refused and vowed to continue bullying them. Angered by this, Alice tried to attack her, but Nico stopped her and warned her that the orc girl was just provoking her. Seeing this, the orc girl then revealed that she wanted to mess up Alice's face, so she must thank her parents for birthing her as a princess. After she left, Alice confided in Nico and confessed that she could not fulfill her duty as the elven princess to protect people. But Nico pointed out that her opponent was an orc, so she stood no chance. Nevertheless, Alice was determined to become stronger, which confused him. Alice then explained that she would do anything to protect what was precious to her, even if it meant becoming a demon. Understanding this, Nico noted her determination and offered to guide her down that path. However, he warned her that the other students might label her a coward, but Alice replied that she didn't mind, prompting Nico to ask if she was certain because his last disciple hated being treated as a coward by her peers. Still, Alice declared that she could ignore any insults if it meant protecting those dear to her. With that being said, she then begged him to take her as his disciple, which made him smile. With self-study still written on the board, Iris stood up and approached Nico. Seeing her grabbing him, he then asked if this was the way to treat her teacher, to which she responded that he hasn't taught them anything yet. Thus, he reminded her that he had no intention of teaching unless he felt like it, so he then forced her to stay put and learn on her own. After seeing her get easily thrown, the others were shocked to see Nico manage to beat Iris and prove that he could practice what he preached. But Nico immediately ordered them to be quiet and get back to self-studying. Suddenly, Alice arrived and quickly apologized for being late. But Nico pointed out that she was very late, so Alice explained that she could not arrive quickly from the Elven Kingdom on time. Upon seeing Alice, Iris asked about the urgent business she had to attend to, and Alice confirmed it, explaining that she had to jog all the way to class. Upon learning this, Iris then asked her to inform her beforehand, but Alice replied that she can't allow her to tag along this time, since this is part of her personal training as Nico's disciple. But Iris found it outrageous that Alice had become Nico's disciple, thinking he would take advantage of her. But Alice defended Nico and asked Iris not to tarnish his reputation, which surprised Iris. Following that, Alice then apologized to Nico on Iris's behalf. Hence, she decided to attack Nico, but he quickly stopped her, and she admitted she knew it wouldn't work. Regardless of that, Nico assured her that she was on the right track, trying to create an opening through apologizing. But as he continued to talk about Alice's surprise attack, Iris still couldn't comprehend that Alice was learning from Nico. On the other hand, Nico began telling Alice that there was something they needed to address now that he had welcomed her as his disciple, which made Alice ask if he was going to teach her his secret moves. But he just smirked and said it was time to declare war on the orc who made her cry the previous day. After that, Alice led Nico to the first-class classroom. There she asked him if they should enter from the front or the back, and Nico said they would sneak in through the back door. As he did so, the students' attention immediately turned to them, prompting Nico to praise their sharp senses. But the instructor immediately asked what Nico wanted since they were in the middle of class. Nico then explained that one of his students had been bullied by a first-class student, and they came to confront her. Thus, he called out to the orc girl and asked her to step outside. But the orc girl taunted Alice and asked if she needed a teacher to get revenge. As she calls them pathetic, Nico clarified that he wouldn't be the one to fight her, which confused her. So he exclaimed that it would be Alice. Seeing this, the orc girl then asked if Alice thought she could beat her and likened it to a lion fighting a bunny. But Nico responded that Alice wouldn't be able to defeat the orc girl as she was now, so he asked her for 3 months to train her, as he could confidently guarantee that Alice would be able to beat the orc girl by then. Still, the orc girl doubted that anything could change in 3 months, to which Nico responded that it would happen if Alice's instructor was the orc girl's instructor. But he asserted that with his guidance, Alice would quickly overpower her. However, the first-class instructor mocked Nico's words and insisted that Nico only got his position through cheap tricks and nepotism. Seeing him releasing his kai, Nico pointed out that he can feel the instructor's kai stabbing through him, which made the instructor ask if Nico was cowering in fear, but Nico retorted that he wasn't because he was much stronger. Suddenly, Nico distracted the instructor by claiming the principal was present. When the instructor looked back, Nico immediately kicked him in the privates, which shocked everyone. As the instructor fell in pain, Nico used the moment to remind everyone that neither he nor Alice were afraid to fight dirty. Thus, he promised that Alice would be victorious in 3 months, and invited them to witness it at the arena during the competition between the 1st and 9th classes, where they could also get their just desserts. Later, outside Nico's house, Alice began to wonder if it was okay to go in, but suddenly some men noticed her and asked if she was one of Nico's friends. However, another speculated that Nico didn't have friends and that Alice was there for revenge. Hence, they began calling for Nico, who quickly appeared and noticed Alice. After hearing Alice call him teacher, the men accused her of trickery and cowardice too, but Nico silenced them and declared that they were being too loud, so he compared the action to slamming a magical alarm clock to shut it up. Though the men thought his logic was twisted, Nico clarified that he didn't attack just anyone, because he knew that they were the bandits seeking revenge because he had captured their boss and handed him over to the guards. In response, the bandit chief accused Nico of destroying their organization, causing it to splinter into factions, and insisted that he must kill Nico to become the new boss and stop further bloodshed. But Nico refuted, saying the chief was just seeking to kill him for personal gain, making him no better than Nico. He also mentioned that he had donated the reward money from capturing their boss to those in need, which the bandit refused to believe, persisting in his intent to kill Nico. The bandit was reminded by his companion to be cautious, as Nico had a tendency to kick people in the privates. As the bandit approached Nico, he was immediately punched in the face, which surprised them and prompted a question about Nico's supposedly cowardly tactics. Nico then retorted that he wasn't fixated on kicking men in the privates, but rather read the situation to choose the most effective move. He explained that many opponents he knows tend to guard their privates, leaving other areas vulnerable. With that, the bandit then realized they have fallen into Nico's trap by focusing on one type of attack. Hence, Nico warned the bandit not to take Alice as a hostage and threatened to break his neck if he did. Nevertheless, he saw this as a perfect opportunity for Alice to take down the remaining bandit. As Alice began to release her kai, Nico noted she didn't hesitate as much when trying to kick him, to which Alice responded that she knew she could not harm him. So Nico then asked the bandit to let Alice punch him, but the bandit refused, stating that he wouldn't be overpowered by an elf, which prompted Nico to slap him. The bandit then questioned Nico's shame, but Nico reminded him that bandits had no right to complain, given their history of killing innocent people. With that, Nico encouraged Alice by reminding her that the bandits were essentially living punching bags, likening them to magical constructs that had amassed countless sins and existed for them to hit. Provoked by this, the bandit hurriedly attacked Nico, who immediately countered with a kick to the privates, leaving the bandit writhing on the ground. Following that, Nico then explained to Alice that there were many ways to create an opening for an attack, using his provocation of the bandit as an example. With that lesson imparted, they proceeded to enter the house. At Sattler's residence, Alice was immediately taken to the dojo and the library. Noticing Alice's interest in the book collection, Nico explained that his family has a long history of martial artists. Among the collection were the secret manuscripts of Korn, a fighter from the legendary hero Roy's party, which made Alice ask if Nico was a descendant of Korn. He then explained that Korn's writings detail Roy, the strongest man to ever live, as a humble man of character, which contrasts with a certain other hero he refused to name. But Alice then inquired if Nico was acquainted with the current hero, but Nico disparaged the current hero, expressing shame at any association with him. Hearing this, Alice mentioned hearing that the current hero is amicable, to which Nico sarcastically replied that this would make him a saint, and adding that this hero had betrayed and robbed him. But Alice then clarified that the current hero is a woman, which surprised Nico, but he agreed it was possible, since the title of hero is given to the winner of a yearly tournament organized by the Kingdom of Sais, crowning the strongest warrior to defeat the Demon Lord. Following that, Alice then asked if Nico had been part of previous hero's party, and he confirmed that he was the martial artist in Hero J's party. Though Alice found this impressive, Nico explained he was chosen due to his connections, specifically a magician and a swordswoman he knew who invited him. Upon hearing this, Alice asked if he was referring to Mary and Lady. Though she didn't know them personally, she had heard they were among the strongest combatants in the Sais kingdom, which made her wonder why Nico wasn't as famous. When asked if she had never heard of him, Alice mentioned rumors about a martial artist known for cowardly tactics. Nico then confirmed that this was him, and explained that Jay, who was mindful of appearances, hid Nico's exploits but eventually expelled him from the party. After Alice expressed sympathy for his hardships, he then asked about Jay's current situation, so she informed him that the Demon Lord had stolen Jay's Kai, leaving him in a dire state. Nico then commented that it was a fitting end for Jay, given the party's reliance on him. He is not surprised that they failed, but he also noted that Jay likely wouldn't face his companions in his current state. Nevertheless, he was glad that Jay was still alive, which made Alice hope he didn't resent them for expelling him, but he clarified that he was eager for vengeance and wouldn't forgive them easily if they just died. Shifting the focus back to Alice's training, Nico explained that the library was one of the 3 pillars of his training methods. The first pillar involved finding openings to deliver powerful strikes to vulnerable areas. The second pillar was controlling the situation to her advantage, and the third pillar was the knowledge and techniques contained in the books. Hence, the library's books covered a wide range of martial arts and offered a variety of striking and grappling techniques suitable for Alice. Thus, he began asking Alice if this was firing her up. He then explained that there is no martial art that can be taught systematically because most martial artists focus on increasing their muscle mass and Kai, and in combat, they just hit each other thoughtlessly. Hearing this, Alice commented that his approach was completely different. He then explained that some fighting styles allow one to hold their ground even without much muscle or Kai, and he believed her odds of beating the orc girl were quite good. Since their opponent underestimated Alice, it was an advantage because those who believe victory is assured don't prepare for setbacks. Meanwhile, they had plenty of time and motivation to investigate and prepare against their opponent. With that in mind, he informed her that he wanted to see what she was capable of. He then explained that there are many fighting styles and it's impossible to master them all in 3 months, so they would focus on the one she was most inclined towards. Martial artists are roughly divided into 2 categories: strikers who focus on punches and kicks, and grapplers who focus on throws and holds. Alice then began thinking about which category she leaned towards, but he interjected that it was neither. So this made her ask if she had no talent, but he advised her not to jump to conclusions. He then explained that physique isn't the only way to judge the appropriate style because personality matters too. Grapplers tend to be more resilient, prioritizing defense and looking for opportunities to counterattack, while strikers must remain composed and create openings themselves. Based on this, Alice leaned more towards strikers. Nico then asked her to read all the books he recommended by the end of the day, which made her ask if he had read them all, and he confirmed this. Surprised by this, she exclaimed that she knew he wasn't just a coward. Confused, Nico asked if that's what she thought of him, to which she replied that he was actually an amazing person. Hearing this, he then asked her to read all the books before noon instead. When she inquired about the plans for this afternoon, he told her that he would show her how strong he was without using cowardly techniques. Later, in Shinoa, they noticed the place was crowded due to the hero's visit. The visit was supposedly to strengthen the relationship with the kingdom of Sais, but the hero was quite popular in Shinoa as well, to which Nico agreed. Setting that aside, they decided to head to the gambling den. There, Nico immediately greeted the manager, who noticed Nico and Alice, so he commented on Alice's well-being. But this made Alice ask if she knew him, and he replied that she was just that famous. Nico then informed the manager that Alice was his disciple, and he wanted to show her his strength, so he came to sign up for a match. After the manager welcomed his participation, Nico asked for the strongest opponent they had. The manager then mentioned they had a participant so strong that they could not find a suitable opponent, which led Nico to quickly request a handicap. With that, the manager asked Nico to put on a ring that would limit his kai to 1/3 of its potential. Afterward, he led them to a room. Inside, Nico asked if he could bring Alice along. The manager reminded him that he would be disqualified if she provided any assistance, but Nico assured him not to worry about that. Reluctantly, the manager made an exception this time. He then instructed them to step into the magic teleportation circle and wished them luck. After they teleported, the manager immediately called one of his attendants and instructed him to bet 100 gold coins on Nico. However, the attendant reminded him that Nico would be facing her, but the manager responded that this was precisely what made it a long-shot win because he was certain that Nico would emerge victorious. On the other side, a girl asked Nico if he or Alice was her opponent, so Nico answered that it was him. Regardless, she declared that she was fine with either, and asked him to keep her entertained for a minute. After saying that it was supposed to be his line, he pointed out that she was a high-ranked adventurer because of her shiny armor, but this made her wonder if he didn't know who she was. He then explained that he had never seen her before, which made her reply that she used to be an adventurer then. After confirming this, he informed Alice that the girl was an ex-adventurer and that it would be easy for him to show Alice how strong he was, promising to defeat the girl with just one finger. However, this made the girl order him to stop making fun of her, but he clarified that he wasn't making fun of anyone and offered to take on another handicap if she wished. Triggered by this, the girl proceeded to attack him and declared that it was over. However, he managed to evade all her attacks, making her question how he did it. He then simply answered that it was because he was stronger. After hitting her forehead, he asked Alice if she saw how strong he was. Alice agreed with him and declared that he was indeed quite strong even without resorting to his usual cowardly tactics. However, his opponent refused to accept defeat and declared that she wasn't weak. But Nico reminded her that she had just lost to a guy using only one finger. Nevertheless, he promised to fight seriously from then on. Hence, the girl then swung her sword at him, but he slapped her in exchange. Seeing her fall down, Nico informed Alice that an uppercut should not be used alone, but she must incorporate it into a light barrage of punches to prevent the opponent from reading and dodging her moves. Suddenly, his opponent began crying, so he reminded her that he hadn't done anything worth crying over. In response, she declared that the fate of humanity rested on her shoulders and she could not afford to lose. But Nico replied that she must face the reality that the fate of humanity was too heavy a burden for her to carry. When she tried to refute him, he grew bored of the fight and asked Alice to observe his grappling technique. Alice then pointed out that it was what he used against Iris, which he confirmed and added that they included both throws and locks. But there are too many techniques to talk about, so he promised to show her more techniques another day. After ending what he considered a letdown of a match, he asked Alice to go back with him. Meanwhile, the spectators were in disbelief that the hero had lost. After hearing the news of the hero being defeated by a martial artist from the Republic of Shinoa, the Sais kingdom was thrown into turmoil, because the defeat of a nation's strongest warrior by a foreigner is always a concern. Meanwhile, in the town of Sais, adventurers began discussing the news that a martial artist from Shinoa had bested their hero, but they struggled to believe it. Suddenly, a man called out the former hero. In response, Jay asked him to stop calling him that, but the man insisted on treating him to a beer. As Jay drank, the man exclaimed that adventurers should always gulp down their drinks like that, but Jay corrected him, saying that he was a hero and not an adventurer. Nevertheless, the man just let Jay call himself whatever he wanted. Dissatisfied, Jay couldn't help but reflect on how their party had faltered after Nico left, and wished that at least Mary and Jessica were still with him. Suddenly, the man asked if Jay had heard about the hero's defeat, but Jay found it hard to believe given the current hero's capability of defeating 100 demons without a scratch. However, the man confirmed the hero was defeated by a single martial artist, which made Jay think of Nico. So he quickly asked if the martial artist had used any cowardly tactic, but the man replied no and added that the hero was defeated with just one finger. Thus, Jay then doubted it could be Nico. But hearing Jay mention Nico's name, the man confirmed that the martial artist's name was indeed Nico. So the man then praised Jay for being well connected, while Jay wondered if Nico had grown stronger since being expelled from their group. Determined, Jay saw this as an opportunity to regain his title as a hero by recruiting Nico back into his party. After standing up suddenly, Jay declared he was heading to Shinoa, exclaiming that the goddess of fortune had never stopped smiling upon him, and hoped his dear friend would wait for him. Meanwhile, in the Demon Lord's domain, news of the hero from Sais being defeated had already spread. Thus, a demon then asked Mary for her opinion as a fellow human, but she clarified that her opinion didn't matter, and that she wouldn't dare dishonor the demon's presence. But the demon reminded her of her past as a member of the hero's party and her role in slaughtering countless officials from their army with her magic. In response, Mary admitted her mistake and acknowledged that humans stood no chance against the Demon Lord's army. Nevertheless, the demon informed her that the one who defeated the hero was a martial artist named Nico. Hearing her master's name, Mary felt relieved to know he was still alive. Back then, Mary had fallen in love with Jay when she was part of his party. However, Jay had many lovers and never spent time with her. Disheartened, she left the group and returned to Sais, only to be captured by an official of the Demon Lord's army on her way home. Hence, the continuous beatings at the hands of the Demon Lord's vassals opened Mary's eyes, making her understand her master's actions. Realizing this, she exclaimed her desire to apologize to him for her late awakening. Seeing this, the demon then asked if she would like to meet Nico. Since he resides in the Republic of Shinoa, where humans and demi-humans coexist, they wanted to offer him a vast sum of money to recruit him into their army. So Mary will be tasked with scouting Nico, and if successful, she would be granted the title of Marquess along with him. However, they would place a curse on her that would kill her if she tried to escape. Despite this, the demon assured her they could live happily in their domain once she succeeded. In response, Mary accepted the task. Meanwhile, at the border between the Republic of Shinoa and the Demon Lord's domain, prisoner number 16 was informed of a visitor, which perplexed Jessica. On the way, she asked the guard who it was, to which he replied it was one of their army's generals, so she then wondered what a general could want from her. Upon arrival, the visitor introduced himself as Risewood and asked if she was a former member of the hero's party, to which she replied affirmatively. Risewood then immediately inquired if she knew a man named Nico. Hearing his name, Jessica recalled how their group could not function properly after Nico was expelled and Jay was defeated by the Demon Lord, so she left the group due to Jay's constant affairs. On her way to Sais, she unknowingly crossed the border and killed a demi-human, but defending herself back home was futile since the demi-human belonged to an allied nation. To maintain diplomatic relations, the kingdom ordered her to turn herself in. Unable to cover the bail, she awaited her sentence to end. Thus, Jessica then asked what Nico did, which confirmed Risewood's speculation that she knew him. She then explained that they were childhood friends and party members. Risewood clarified that they investigated Nico, and revealed that he had defeated the hero in a fair match. Furthermore, he only used one finger to defeat the hero, and had been beating local bandits and taking their money, which made Jessica comment that this sounded like Nico, but Risewood added that Nico had been giving the money to a certain house, and it's her mother's house. Jessica's mother lived in poverty with her younger sister. Their income was cut off after Jessica was jailed and were starving until Nico supported them. Though Jessica was skeptical about this, Risewood assured her they traced the money, which led them to her. Indeed, Jessica had wronged Nico back then. Due to being in love with Jay, she believed everything he did was right. Moreover, she was mesmerized by his Kai and fighting prowess. However, after losing his power to the Demon Lord, Jay became a shallow womanizer. Thus, she now understood that expelling Nico was a mistake. With this in mind, Jessica begged Risewood to tell Nico that she was sorry, but Risewood refused and insisted that she should do it personally. Jessica then reminded him that she was a prisoner, to which he replied that they would free her if she could get Nico on their side. So she then asked if Risewood planned to have Nico join the army. Risewood explained that it would be great, but all they really needed was for Nico to stay in the country, since the state currently required power, and an army would certainly fall apart if outstanding individuals went around defeating their commanders. Just as the Demon Lord domain had the Demon Lord and the Sais Kingdom had the hero, their country needed its own deterrent force. Hearing this, Jessica realized that they needed Nico to maintain peace. After confirming this, Risewood asked for her cooperation to win Nico over to their side. Jessica then agreed, as she is certain that Nico preferred living in peace. She also instructed Risewood to keep the news about Nico defeating the hero from spreading too much, as Nico hated attention. With that, she asked him to take her to where Nico was and vowed to convince him, which made Risewood remind her not to disappoint them. Meanwhile, at Saddle's house, Nico informed Alice that it was time to move on to the second part of her training. When Alice asked what it would be, he explained that it was time to switch to a more pragmatic approach after studying hand-to-hand combat. So she then asked if she would have to punch people, but he responded that they were going to dive into a dungeon to try her techniques against monsters. Though Alice reminded him that only registered adventurers could challenge dungeons, Nico assured her that he had registered her as her agent. Though he could not have done it when he was unemployed, now as a teacher, he seems to have earned a lot of trust from people. Later on their way, Nico asked if Alice had any idea what a dungeon was like, to which she answered that she had read about them in books. Dungeons were mysterious places around the globe, rewarding treasure to those who dared to brave their challenges. So many adventurers made a living by exploring dungeons. Though there were many types of dungeons spawning all sorts of monsters, this specific private dungeon only contains skeleton warriors. Upon arriving, Alice noticed there weren't any adventurers nearby, and Nico explained that it was because this was private property. Though it was her first time adventuring into a dungeon, Nico reassured her not to be nervous, as this dungeon was E-ranked for newbies. After reassuring her, they immediately encountered a skeleton, which seemed quite quick. Nevertheless, this skeleton warrior would be Alice's opponent. So she then asked if monsters employed Kai, to which Nico answered that some didn't but most humanoid ones did, and that this skeleton warrior was about as strong as her. As she wondered if she could defeat her opponent, Nico informed her that skeleton warriors move in slow, predictable patterns and she must stop doubting herself. Encouraged by this, Alice quickly charged towards the skeleton warrior. As the skeleton prepared to attack, Alice dodged and landed a strong punch followed by a kick. After successfully defeating it, Nico praised her for her quick actions. In response, Alice explained that she had imagined the skeleton as him, which helped her attack without hesitation, though this admission slightly unnerved him. Nevertheless, he was pleased that she could now throw punches without hesitation, so they decided to move on to the next challenge. After defeating some skeletons, Alice noticed her Kai had increased. Nico then explained that defeating monsters increases Kai, which is common knowledge among adventurers. While it's generally more effective to train traditionally, her Kai was so low that this method seemed like a hidden trick to her. Setting that aside, they decided to proceed to the second and third floors of the dungeon. Eventually, they reached the last floor, but Nico warned her not to lower her guard as a certain guy might appear. When asked who he was talking about, Nico explained that it was the skeleton captain, a monster with about 3 times as much Kai as the skeleton warriors, while the orc girl Alice would be challenging next month had about 10 times the Kai, meaning if she struggled here, she would have no chance against the orc girl. Suddenly, a skeleton emerged, prompting Alice to ask if it was the skeleton captain, but Nico responded that it was actually a skeleton general, a higher-ranked monster than a skeleton captain, and a rare sight outside of dungeons below D rank. So he speculated that the skeleton had evolved, as monsters also increase their Kai by defeating others, and can evolve upon reaching a certain Kai threshold. But this phenomenon is rare because monsters typically live surrounded by others of similar strength, making it hard to win consistently. Thus, he suspected someone might have artificially evolved the skeleton. Upon learning this, Alice began asking if she should defeat it, and Nico confirmed that while the skeleton general was still weaker than the orc girl, defeating it was necessary for her to have a chance against the orc girl. Determined, Alice asked Nico to observe her as she took on the challenge. Hence, she confidently commanded the skeleton to come to her. Upon observing the skeleton, Alice noticed its formidable amount of Kai, but Nico reminded her that he hoped he didn't need to tell her how to approach this fight. Thus, she then proceeds to approach the skeleton, while Nico advises her to focus on evading. After successfully dodging, she assured Nico that he didn't need to repeat himself. However, Nico knew that only evading wouldn't get her far. That's because the skeleton general had faster attacks due to its higher Kai. Upon noticing the incoming attack, Alice attempted to block it, but she was thrown back. After receiving this direct hit, she informed Nico that her arm was broken, so Nico quickly used healing magic on her and warned her of the pain to come once the adrenaline wore off. Despite the pain, Alice was determined to continue and took her revenge on the skeleton general. As he watched her fight, Nico concluded that she had met the minimum requirement, so he told her to stop and to step back. Seeing her reluctance, he assured her that she already did enough, so he would now demonstrate how to defeat a stronger opponent with proper tactics, even if it's 5 times stronger than her. After Nico successfully kicked the skeleton, he explained to Alice that by concentrating her kai in one place, her focused attacks would be more effective. He also emphasized the importance of reducing an opponent's mobility, as he had done by breaking the skeleton's arm. Suddenly, the skeleton charged at Nico, but he evaded all of it and swiftly ended the fight. After seeing him defeat the skeleton, Alice was left impressed, but Nico cautioned her not to be too easily impressed, as she needed to defeat a much stronger opponent next month. After Alice promised to try her best, she asked about Nico's magic abilities, as she had never known he could use healing magic. Nico then explained the versatility of magic for adventurers, including its uses for blinding opponents and disguising oneself. But as he was about to give her an example, they heard someone coming in and realized it was Sadala. While Alice was confused why the principal was there, Nico explained that Sadala might be there to train a little. Nevertheless, he decided to take this opportunity to show her how useful shape-shifting magic can be. With that, he then proceeded to copy Sadala's appearance. Alice was impressed, as she could not tell him apart from the real one. But Nico explained that shape-shifting magic only changes appearance and doesn't affect kai, strength, or abilities, making it useful for disguises but not for combat. Setting that aside, he then decided to prank his sister. As Nico approached Sadala in disguise, she quickly turned in confusion and became nervous after seeing her appear. Hurriedly, Nico revealed himself, and this made Sadala ask him not to scare her like that, which made Nico ask her if it's that strange for him to be there, to which she answered yes and also called him Nico, as she explained that he had already cleared these dungeons ages ago. Seeing him confused by this name, she reminded him that it's how she used to call him when they were kids. Setting that aside, he then informed her that he brought along his disciple for training, and decided to tell her what happened. With that, she then found out that he's teaching Alice the basics of martial arts by fighting monsters, and suggested that he might as well go for people justifiable to fight against if that's his plan. With that being said, she then instructed him to ask one of his bandit friends if any bad guys need a good beating lately, and though it should be her duty, he can take care of it if he wants. After saying that, she then proceeded to bid farewell so she could head back, but this left Nico in doubt. Later in the forest, Nico began calling someone outside their house, which made the man realize that it was Nico. Upon seeing the man, Alice quickly asked if he was a bandit, to which he clarified that he used to be one. However, he had a change of heart after Nico destroyed their hideout, and now he just sells information regarding his fellow bandits, which is more profitable. Setting that aside, Nico proceeded to ask him if he had heard any groups doing anything evil lately, to which he answered yes. He then explained that some bandits were selling illegal drugs, assaulting merchants on the road, and engaging in slave trading. In particular, he heard that they were dealing a lot with elven slaves. Nico then asked him where they are now, but the man replied that it would cost him 5 gold coins for this information. After he gave the gold coins, Nico urged him to tell everything, to which the man agreed. After telling them where the bandits mostly operated, Nico and Alice decided to go to where the man told them, and were reminded to be careful of their strong opponent. Knowing this, Nico informed Alice that they came for her to gain hands-on experience, but there are 2 important things she must keep in mind. The first is that she must always go for locks and grabs, and the second is that once she is able to grab them, she must break their bones or dislocate a joint. Previously, he advised her to limit her opponent's options to better evade attacks, and informed her that grappling is safer than trying to break the arm of a stronger opponent with kicks and punches. Upon remembering this, she assured him that she would do it if her grabs connected. Inside the warehouse, they then decided to go through the back door, and find where the bandits might be hiding. After searching for a while, Nico immediately spotted the bandits' hidden entrance because he knew the bandits well. After entering and barging in their door, the bandits were surprised by their presence. Upon looking at the hostages, Nico pointed out that they were keeping dark elves, which made Alice exclaim that it does not matter if they are dark or high elves because they are all her fellow countrymen. Seeing that the bandits were already angry, Nico asked Alice to take care of the Baldy, which made her ask about the rest. But suddenly, the bandits began to attack them, so Nico quickly stopped them and proceeded to beat them up. Seeing that only the Baldy was left, Nico assured Alice that no one would interrupt her now. However, this led the Baldy to ask Nico if he went this far for Alice to gain fighting experience and proposed Nico let him go if he beat Alice. After Nico agreed, the Baldy then reminded him to keep his sword. Thus, he began declaring that he had 3 times Alice's kai, and that she should just surrender. However, Alice immediately grabbed him and proceeded to break his arm. As he suffered from the pain, he attempted to attack Alice, but she swiftly kicked him in his private area. Consequently, Alice earned Nico's praise, to which she responded that she had no idea she could be so merciless. But Nico assured her not to worry, saying the bandits deserved it so they could learn a lesson. Afterward, Alice checked on one of the elves. When asked if she was the High Elf Princess, Alice confirmed and asked what the matter was. In response, the Dark Elf exclaimed that he would rather die than be rescued by her. Seeing her surprised look, he blamed High Elves for the Dark Elves being sold as slaves because they took their land. Thus, the Dark Elves would never forgive High Elves and that their chieftain Colm would one day reclaim their stolen territory. As Alice acknowledged his statement, this prompted him to add that Colm was training with a powerful mentor, and despite his sister's disappearance, she was a genius. So he claimed that a weak monarch like Alice was not qualified to restore their country's former glory. Alice then admitted that he was right about her shortcomings, but Nico intervened and hit the Dark Elf. Nico then asked the Dark Elf if they should leave him to rot, or sell him as a slave himself. The Dark Elf thought he was joking, but Nico asserted that he was serious, and that some pervert nobles would pay handsomely for a Dark Elf. Though Alice stopped him and assured him that she wasn't sad, Nico insisted the ungrateful Dark Elf needed a lesson. After releasing him, Alice acknowledged that High Elves were partly responsible for Dark Elf slavery, so she expressed her desire to help the Dark Elves, even if it was for her own selfish reasons or even if they don't want it. But the Dark Elf still refused her help and insisted that she only won because the bald bandit let his guard down. In response, Alice declared that it's the reason she would become stronger and save their country, which silenced him. Later, Alice decided to ask Nico for a break from their training. Nico then informed her that he had already taught her the basics of everything he wanted to impart, so he agreed. With that, she then declared her intention to become stronger and promised to return before the tournament. As she leaves him, she proceeds to call her father and requests access to the dungeons where skeleton generals dwell. Inside a dungeon, Alice was exhausted after a fight. Despite her fatigue, she continued pushing forward to become stronger. After parting ways with Nico, Alice traveled to various places and conquered many dungeons. Often, she couldn't reach her next destination within the same day, so she ended up camping inside dungeon. Weeks later, she noticed an incoming skeleton general. Seeing her nemesis, she immediately attacked it and broke its bones. She then congratulated it for being the 100th skeleton general she had defeated and declared this to be its end. However, after successfully defeating it, she felt it still wasn't enough. Later, on the lowest floor of the dungeon, she noticed another person and wondered who she was. Upon observing her, Alice concluded that the person did not seem to need help, but she still warned her to watch her back. Turning around, she quickly beheaded the two skeletons. Seeing Alice approach, she then thanked her and asked for her name. After Alice introduced herself as a rookie adventurer, Jessica also introduced herself and emphasized that she owed Alice one. However, Alice asked her not to worry about it and commented on how cowardly the skeletons were for attacking from behind, to which Jessica agreed. Seeing Alice confused by her expression, Jessica explained that she had just zoned out and asked Alice why she was there, so Alice answered that she came to become stronger. In response, Jessica said that was also one of her objectives. Hearing this, Alice complimented Jessica's swordsmanship, saying it was almost on the level of the legendary Jessica from the Say's Kingdom. However, Jessica clarified that she was another Jessica. Nevertheless, she wanted to show her gratitude and invited Alice to her nearby home for a meal prepared by her mother. After Alice agreed, Jessica led her to her house and assured her that her mother's meals were delicious. But first, she asked Alice to wait while she talked to her mother. As Jessica announced her return, her mother asked if it was really her, to which she responded yes. Her mother then asked where she had been, but Jessica only expressed her relief that they were well. Following that, she then asked about her younger sister Maria's whereabouts, and her mother replied that Maria had gone to the capital for school. Upon hearing this, Jessica expressed her desire to see how much her sister had grown. Before she could forget, she gave her mother the souvenirs she brought. However, her mother refused to accept them, explaining that she did not need the money. Hearing this, Jessica asked if her mother had struggled while she was gone. Her mother then responded that it was hell for them, with no food or medicine, and they were on the brink of selling their bodies to survive. However, a savior had come to their aid, which made Jessica guess it was Nico. Her mother confirmed that Nico had saved them, providing enough money to live on and supporting them with savings so Maria could enroll in school in the capital. Upon learning this, Jessica asked if her mother would be mad if she revealed that she had tried to kill Nico. In response, her mother quickly asked her to explain. After revealing the truth, her mother could not believe what Jessica had done to Nico. Though Jessica claimed to regret it deeply, her mother exclaimed that she had not raised her to be an ungrateful wretch towards the man their family was indebted to. Jessica then explained that she never expected Nico to support their family while she was gone. However, her mother revealed that Nico had been helping them for a long time. When Jessica and Maria were still kids, their mother was forced to beg on the streets while unemployed to put food on their plates. It was then that the young Nico offered her a job at his family's mansion because he didn't want Jessica and Maria to suffer. If not for his help, she would have had to sell them as slaves to survive. But Nico kept this a secret to avoid causing friction in their friendship. Thanks to Nico, Jessica had a better upbringing, and even her swordsmanship training was due to his influence. However, Jessica called it a lie and insisted that her swordsmanship instructor took her in due to her potential. In response, her mother exclaimed that a knight from the kingdom would not take a poor girl from the slums as their disciple. With that, she declared that she wouldn't tolerate having ungrateful daughters and ordered Jessica to leave the house. After throwing Jessica out, she angrily wished she had sold her as a baby. Witnessing this, Alice immediately asked Jessica what happened. Seeing Jessica tear up, Alice understood that she must have had it rough. In response, Jessica explained that she had lost her home, friends, memories, and pride as a swordsman. Thus, she began to question if she was such a fool. On the day of the tournament, Alice finally visited Nico. Immediately, he noticed that she had changed a lot in a short time. Alice then shared how it was difficult to make it this far, to which Megan asked if she had been tackling dungeons left and right. Proudly, she proclaimed that she had defeated 100 skeleton generals. So Nico quickly acknowledged her hard work. Indeed, the skeletons were tough on her initially, and she had to eat monsters when she ran out of food, so she learned to boil them well. Despite the hardships, she became stronger and could now hold her head high. Moreover, she also made a friend and promised to introduce her to him next time. Setting that aside, Nico reminded her that her match was scheduled for that evening, so they needed to come up with a plan, and he had gathered information about her opponent. The orc she was to face was much more muscular and had about 5 times her kai, even though she has gotten stronger. Hearing this, Alice figured he was implying she had no chance, but Nico clarified that she could still win by properly administering her kai, dodging, and engaging in hand-to-hand combat. With that being said, he proceeded to ask if she thought she could beat the orc girl. In response, Alice declared confidently that she would, as she was the woman who had taken down 100 skeleton generals on her own. Satisfied with her spirit, Nico reminded her not to lower her guard because her opponent was sentient, unlike the skeletons. Also, Alice must ensure that none of the orc girl's punches connect. Knowing that the orc girl left a crater in the arena during her last match, Alice figured this information would come in handy. But her cautious mindset as a martial artist earned Nico's praise, to which she responded that she learned from the best. Hence, she declared that she would certainly defeat the orc girl. At the arena, the students wondered if Alice could win. Though they wanted her to succeed, they doubted her chances against the orc girl, making Iris nervous for Alice. Meanwhile, Nico noted that Alice's classmates from the 9th class had come to cheer her on, and he was surprised that Iris would let Alice enter the arena. Alice then clarified that Iris had strongly opposed it, but she could not say no to her whims. However, they also noticed that the 1st class came to cheer for the orc girl. Additionally, Alice had heard that their class would be going on a trip, and the treatment she would receive there would depend on this match. Knowing this, Nico agreed that the orc girl couldn't afford to lose if she hoped to keep her luxurious meals and room. Nonetheless, he advised Alice to stick to their plan. After entering the stage, the orc girl immediately pointed out that Alice hadn't changed in the past 3 months. However, Alice was glad she had succeeded in suppressing her kai. Suddenly, the orc girl's instructor asked where Alice's teacher was, so Alice answered that Nico was running late. Nevertheless, the instructor refused to let Nico off and decided that Nico should apologize after his student beat Alice. As the orc girl agreed with his plan, she then asked the principal if they could begin. So Sadala then explained the rules. They were allowed to use any magic or weapon, and the match would end when one of them surrendered or was declared unable to continue. With that being said, she then asked them to get ready and began the match. Upon hearing this, the orc girl immediately released her kai. Noticing that Alice was not moving, she taunted her and questioned if her kai was that intimidating. Still, she assured Alice that while she wouldn't kill her, the pain she was about to inflict would be immense. However, Alice questioned if she could really afford to be so confident, which confused the orc girl. Suddenly, Alice asked her to look behind her. Confidently, the orc girl declared that the cowardly techniques her teacher taught her wouldn't work on her, but she suddenly shuddered as she sensed a powerful kai. Looking back, she discovered it was Nico's. Alice then seized the moment to remind her not to turn her back on her opponent in the middle of a match. As a result, Alice managed to kick the orc girl and throw her to the ground. As the spectators were surprised by this, the orc girl called Alice a coward and accused her of using cheap tricks. Alice then countered by saying it was the orc girl's fault for not preparing countermeasures after knowing they weren't afraid to fight dirty. Furthermore, this situation would not have arisen if she hadn't lowered her guard. Upon hearing this, the orc girl realized that Nico had arrived late on purpose to make her turn around with his overwhelming kai. Suddenly, Nico asked the orc girl what her instructor had said about making him apologize if Alice lost the match. After confirming this, he declared that if the orc girl lost, she would have to apologize to all the students she had bullied. Hearing this, the students immediately called on the orc girl to apologize and urged Alice to beat her. Triggered by this, the orc girl threatened to kill them. Hence, Nico advised her to use her punches as forcefully as she did when breaking crates. In response, the orc girl declared that she would do so without needing to be told. Noticing the orc girl's kai, Alice finally released her own kai, prompting the orc girl to question when Alice's kai had become so strong. Nevertheless, she concluded that Alice had misled her about her kai levels 3 months ago and was pretending to be weak. However, Alice clarified that she had indeed been weak 3 months ago, and that the pressure from the orc girl's kai would have been enough to bring her to her knees. But now, she is Alice the martial artist and is no longer a weak princess that needs to be protected. Despite this, the orc girl continued to call her a coward. As an attack came, Alice quickly dodged it, which surprised the orc girl. Following that, Alice then struck the orc girl's legs. Frustrated by this, the orc girl persisted with her offense, but Alice managed to evade all her attacks. As she began to wonder why her hits wouldn't connect, the orc girl was confronted by Nico, who questioned what had happened to her famous punches and declared that her crater-forming punches were just rumors. Undeterred, the orc girl continued throwing punches, but Alice found an opening and landed a punch to the orc girl's face. After being hit, the orc girl wondered why she could not beat Alice. Alice then explained that she could dodge her attacks because she knew the orc girl relied solely on her punches. However, the orc girl clarified that she had just chosen not to use kicks this time, but Alice explained that she had actually controlled her to avoid using them, and after she studied her previous matches through a crystal ball, Alice observed that none of the orc girl's victories involved kicks. The orc girl then tried to explain herself, but Alice pointed out that kicks weren't her forte, despite her belief that a single kick could be devastating due to her kai level. Furthermore, Alice reminded her that Nico had provoked her into using her strongest technique, which was unusual because most people wouldn't incite their opponents to use their best techniques. Seeing her realizing the situation, Alice declared that they had controlled her by giving her 2 options: use kicks, which she wasn't good at, or punches, which she excelled at, and the orc girl had chosen to rely on her punches. Upon seeing her expression, Alice further explained that the biggest hurdle was overcoming the orc girl's arms, which were incredibly fast even if they narrowed her options down to only punches. Upon learning this, the orc girl then admitted that victory would have been hers if she had not been careless. With that in mind, she finally surrendered to Alice. As a result, the announcer immediately declared Alice the winner. At Shenoa's market, Nico was all frustrated by Alice's lateness and began to wonder how he ended up visiting the market on the weekend. Previously, Alice had asked him for a reward for winning the match. Though Nico asked if she was asking money from a jobless guy like him, she still requested to hang out in town. But looking around, he noticed that there were many couples around and wondered about it. Suddenly, Alice finally arrived while also apologizing for making him wait. In response, Nico scolded her for making her teacher wait, but she explained that it took Iris a while to do her hair. Thus, Nico then asked if Iris had styled her hair that way, to which Alice confirmed and asked if it was a good disguise. But Nico commented that it would be pretty dumb not to see through it, and suggested she learn shape-shifting magic instead of relying on disguises. However, Alice explained that she did not like that type of magic because she thought it would be rude to change her body, which her parents had given her. Hearing this, Nico noted that she wouldn't become stronger with that mindset. But Alice assured him that she would not hesitate using such magic if necessary, but she would not use it for trivial matters. Setting that aside, he then proceeded to ask where they were headed, and she responded that it was a place she thought he would enjoy. So he then began to guess it was a bandit hideout, but Alice refused to tell him. On their way, people around them began to assume they were a couple and commented on how Nico was handsome and strong, while Alice appeared scrawny, so they speculated that Nico was after Alice's money. Regardless of that, Nico quickly reassured Alice that muscles weren't everything for humans, which only made Alice feel worse. After visiting some shops, Alice finally took Nico to the main event she had planned, which made Nico ask if there was something interesting up ahead. With a smirk, Alice led him to the event and excitedly showed him the wrestling event with betting.